Okay, but the question is, why is the left losing men? And why are they flocking right?
I would say that a good mix of men moving to the right, I want to say, are also like people that are just disenfranchised with the left, thinking that like, oh, this doesn't represent what my interest anymore.
Because the left hates men.
Um,
The Democrats lost the male vote. Why?
I mean, it's not representative of. I don't mean it. I don't think it means that they like. The thing is that I'm not gonna like sit here glazing the left. Like I'm gonna be as unbiased as possible in my opinion.
Please be radically centrist in your answers.
But I think like dumbing it down to a reductive argument of why does the left hate men, which is already kind of like a leading question.
No.
Like it's a lot more factors at play. Like there are echo chambers, rabbit holes that you can go into. There is incel culture, which has multiple facets to it. The lack of, because like the white cis heterosexual male is technically like a true neutral.
People. A true neutral, okay.
So no matter what, it's always going to be in like juxtaposition of any minority. So
Sure. But do you agree that there are many on the left? There's a significant, my thesis would be, there's a significant enough minority on the left who harp constantly about men need to sit down and shut up and toxic masculinity, and there is toxic masculinity. That's real, no doubt.
Yeah.
But the overemphasis of it, men need to sit down and shut up, it's not like, it's unappealing, especially to the young men. And the bigger issue with the whole cis hetero normative thing is like
intersectionality.
Intersectionality, yes. Nobody loves intersectionality more than I do. I say this is the fundamental issue. Let's say young white men are not beneficiaries of the systems that benefit old white men. And so you could say there is. I know people who've been in the old boys club and I've heard stories about it. It's real.
That was what I was referring to.
Yeah, right. But then what happens with the Gen Zers and the youth, the young people, is they go, you guys are blaming me for a system that benefits the old white men, but because you're just viewing it through the one dimension of white men, you're putting me in that camp. And I think the left broadly falls victim to that type of thinking of, well, white men.
I think that, as well as there are a lot of white men who suffer from mental illness. There are a lot of white men who come from very poor circumstances, socioeconomic.
Yeah, can't buy houses, can't get jobs.
Yeah, and it's just like there are so many factors at play that it's like to dumb it down to, oh, intersectionality, white men, bad. I don't think anyone fundamentally thinks that. And I will say there was like a movement within, I think
some people think that.
I mean, I won't say, generally speaking, I don't think that is the majority.
It's a sizable enough minority where it causes problems.
It's a loud minority. It's a really loud minority. The thing is that also, I want to say towards the 2010s, don't remember the exact year. That was a really close bird. I want to say that there was a movement towards feminism that got a lot more radicalized and a lot more like hateful instead of like its egalitarian premise. So when you kind of move it into that sort of like misanthropic viewpoint, you get a lot of like hateful speech towards white men, which is what I think you're referring to.
Yeah. So we agree the left hates men, is what it sounds like. No, I watched a discussion between a YouTuber named Not So Erudite and a bunch of these
I messaged her. Democrat
men who shall not be named, although I've talked to, I think, all of them except one. And they're like, the Democrats lost men. It's a significant, the data clearly shows that. And it was just like, what to do about it? It's like,
the thing
this is my thesis has always been, you got to get rid of the freaks on your own side, okay? And if there are, the people that are like, men need to sit down and shut up. It's like, those people need to be excised from the movement. Just like, maybe not to the same degree, but like if someone on the right is saying like, women need to, sit down and it's like, it's the same vibe. It's just people receive it the same way. Women shouldn't vote. Women should shut up. Men should shut up. It's just like,
well, I'd say
so
one is more historically in a position of like at least socioeconomic power. So
yeah, but one group. But again, The young men are not part of that group. So anytime you're doing a historical analysis, it's like...
I'm just bringing it to the forefront of the conversation.
Yeah,
but you said something that I forgot just now that I had a point on. What were you saying?
I was saying the left hates men.
Like, more recently.
And the Democrats don't know what to do about it.
You said something about getting rid of the freaks on your own side.
Yeah, excising the freaks on your own side.
The thing is that what I feel like the problem with the current Democratic Party in the US is more of like it's become subsumed by like technocracy.
Yeah.
Like they're just a bunch of technocrats in power. It's techno-feudalism at this point.
Good. I like the class analysis. Nobody loves class analysis more than I do.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so on that exact point, I think that like to get rid of the freaks on our own side, like we have to separate the left from the Democratic Party.
Keep talking.
And then if we're trying to talk about the left in general as it relates to men, they probably feel the freaks on your own side. I think that to an extent, there should not be any animosity with two people who have the same goal, but the left right now, the goal is opposition to the right, and the right now is heading towards authoritarianism and like
more toxic masculinity and all that. They're like embracing that.
Not even that, just like actual like consolidation of power into like smaller and smaller amounts of people, smaller and smaller figures. So like if you have power decentralized more and more like you have in the left, that's why you don't have a lot of like large leftist political speakers, you know? Like it's not the same level of punditry that you have on the right, because a lot of it is decentralized.
Yeah, but the left dominates the culture. So like your average cultural commentator is still, you know.
I wouldn't agree with that.
You don't think so?
No.
You think the culture is?
I think there's push and pull between both.
That's fair. That's radically centrist. Can I ask you a separate question?
Go for it.
Men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Different, right? Fundamentally, biologically, there are differences between men and women that manifest in important ways in the culture.
Then,
like, let me give an example.
Because if we're gonna go biologically, then I'd say reproductive systems, yes.
Yeah, but even attitudes and what the right attitudes should be. So, for example, you know, like instances of sexual harassment. So if a woman is at a bar and a man comes up and grabs her ass like a stranger, not like assault, but like, you know, clearly does that, I would say that is worse than if a man is at a bar and like a gay man comes up and grabs his ass. Even though it's exactly the same, you know, phenomenon in terms of individual having their butt grabbed by a man, it's worse if it happens to the woman.
I would say it's realistically the same amount of bad, but psychologically I think men are told like man up, it's not that big of a deal. Because
it is actually not that big of a deal. Like I have been at the bar and gay men have come up and grabbed my ass. And it's like, fuck off, dude.
I've also had
it's not like
people grab my ass and I'm just like,
right.
It's
well,
just
so
extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, but I would, yeah, but there's, and I can't. It's a vibes thing. I can't give you an entire rational.
Well, no, it's just like it's ignoring the actual power structure in place. Because one is just like,
men are like.
Because I would say
aggressive biologically and
no,
because
if you have a gay man going to a straight man, like hierarchically, if we're being really, really like American about it.
Yeah, nobody loves more America more than I do.
Gay men have less rights.
Oh my God! See, this is the intellectualization of what is fundamentally a vibes-based phenomenon.
Well, okay? it's like punching up in comedy. It's like punching up in comedy, because you can't punch down.
You can.
You can. Enough. If you hit a really funny joke, then it is funny. But most of the time, it's not funny.
But my point is like there are like we should view women being sexually harassed as worse than.
I think both
the
are
same thing happening.
Bad.
Yes, of course, yes. But I'm talking that specific instant. There's a there's a video from like the 70s or 80s where it's this female reporter who goes up and pinches guys butts on the street. And she's like, what do you think? And they're like, what do you think of that? And all the guys are just laughing like, haha, that's funny.
But that's punching up.
Right, okay, but that's my point. It is different. And I would say it's not like because men have a class thing, like this is some systemic revolutionary act. It's just like in the moment.
No, it's not a revolutionary act.
It's
just
because women are less, on average, physically capable of defending themselves, so they're naturally more, I would say, vulnerable to being like fucking harassed and then feeling psychologically like harmed by that, which is a real thing. But I would not say the same for men if it's the same instance, because like I said, I've been in that circumstance, and like the idea that, well, now I'm a victim of sexual harassment. It's like I think that would only make things worse.
I would say that about myself, despite it having happened to me.
You wouldn't say that if a man comes up and grabs a girl's ass, you don't think that?
Well, it has literally happened to me.
That's fair. Okay, so and you wouldn't call yourself a victim of sexual harassment?
I mean, the thing is that it's pretty common, so it's like, I don't, like, what am I, it's not really a badge of, like, honor.
That's true. I do think there's an element of, in the culture, like, there's like a moral cachet and moral value to being a victim. And so there's an incentive for people to, exaggerate things, and that happens all the time.
No, because I think if you ask, like, just the general, like, and maybe this is more vain of me, but, like, the general attractive girl, like, this is pretty commonplace. Right.
And, yeah, and the point I'm making is just...
that there's a biological difference because men are able to protect themselves, therefore...
I think so. There's a real vibe there that I'm pointing to.
The vibe that I'm disagreeing with is that I think it's more based on the premise, less of biology and more of, like, hierarchy and punching up versus punching down.
Sure, yeah, and then the question is, to what degree is that hierarchy in terms of, like, a local interaction between two individuals in the moment? Does one have the power because of systems, or just because males have more physical capability than females?
If a girl grabs another girl's ass...
Yeah, what is that? Is that less bad, or would that be less bad than a man grabbing a girl's ass?
I think I would feel just the same, because I'd be like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, that's fair. Well, what advice would you give young men in 2025 who are trying to navigate this very difficult world that hates men?
That hates men.
Yeah. I may have poisoned it with that last statement, but...
That's a leading question.
That is a leading question.
But the thing is that I do think that there is a lot to be said on how men in the modern day are often, like, ostracized and or ignored on certain issues, like we were talking about with, like, people with mental illness, socioeconomic status. And it's totally fair to feel like you are being subjugated to a system that you didn't really have a part in. And I think there's a lot to be said on having empathy towards, like, you don't really know why you were born into this position, but you have a bunch of ire towards you, but also you have systemic benefits to being how you were born as well. So it comes at a confusing sort of dynamic, but I think, and what was most impactful to me was, I remember I saw this video on, like, the manosphere itself, and it was about kind of, like, showing radical empathy and putting out, like, the hand first and being like, and this goes for both sides, so minority or not, putting out the hand first and being like, I'm sorry, I'm here to hear you out. And I don't think anyone who is facing ire from a minority for being a white man is, like, you shouldn't be subjugated to that whoever is, like, throwing you that malice is essentially, like, just taking out their own personal stuff onto you. At the same time, it doesn't do any good to escalate that sort of thing. So
what do you mean escalate it?
Escalate as in, like, retaliate.
Oh, of course, yeah, no doubt. But I guess there always seems to be this. I had a conversation with FD Signifier and all of his radical Marxist fans were in the comments because I had brought up how, it is annoying to constantly hear the anti-white, anti-male bullshit, which is just everywhere. And
I mean, how recent of a concept is that, I want to say, too?
How recent of a concept?
Yeah.
I don't know, last like 10 years or so, I would say. Which is fair. And I made the point of like, look, you could make the case that like affirmative action type stuff or like conscious, we need to elevate minorities, like that was necessary to correct from the past.
And I would say it hasn't even done that much.
Yeah, I mean, or it backfired. You can make that case. But my point is, either way, it's just like, look, the right is gaining power. The freak right, the identitarian right, is gaining power because they're capitalizing on. It's very easy to just show some minority,
disenfranchised men.
Yeah, but like if you are a disenfranchised male and you just constantly see that white men sit down, shut up, you've had the power forever. It's just so. This is no wonder they're going right, and it's just my advice to the left would be cut that shit out ASAP and be the loudest critics of it. Which is what I would say to the right too of like the white supremacy shit.
Oh, that's just that I obviously am a huge white supremacist, as you can tell. Yeah. And
no one loves white supremacy more than I do.
Yeah, no one loves white supremacy more than I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that at least the left that I interact with, I find that to be kind of like, maybe I'm in the wrong circles, but I don't really interact with that.
That's fair. A lot of it is online, and the question is, well, maybe we should just ignore the fucking online, which is real. But like, I was at a corporation where they said,
"Oh, Chicago."
They pay people differently based on whether or not they will help meet their diversity goals, which were literally measured by race and gender. It's like, that's fucking stupid. And that's like a third of the reason I left was because of that. I'm like, I'm not going to help
perpetuate the system.
Well, yeah. And also I was part of the DEI program design team. I'm not going to help.
You were part of the DEI design team?
Yes.
That's funny.
They needed strong male leadership. I'm not going to help, perpetuate the very things that are denying me careers. What are you looking at?
Look at this guy.
Greg looks like how I feel.
A mime?
Real quick. 1 minute take. Why does the left hate men so much?
He can't speak. He's mime.
Who knows? Not a real phenomenon. That's fair.
The thing is that I'm not going to deny that there are not people who hate white men on principle on the left.
Yeah.
Duh. But
Duh indeed, yes.
But at the same time, to attribute that entire thing to the entire left is reductive, which I'm sure you know.
True. Agreed. Yeah. That's my point of, I agree it's a minority and they need to be excised. And most of the left, I think, doesn't actually subscribe to that.
A lot of the people that I interact with online, especially as it relates to like masculinity studies, gender studies in general, but I tend to like a lot of more masculinity content anyway, because I think it's really nice to have that sort of different perspective. Yeah. A lot of them do not have that sort of like vitriolic sentiment, and I think that's really necessary to have like proper discourse.
I think that's fair. We'll wrap up. As you know, I have a minor in gender studies.
As you do.
So if you have any questions about women's issues.
I have so many.
Yeah, what would, I can answer.
Why does the right hate women?
That's a good question. Why does the right hate women? Because... Why does a Nick Fuentes and an Andrew Tate, where does all that come from?
Well, Nick Fuentes
psychological
really likes
trauma.
Cat boys. What?
Maybe. Psychological trauma that manifests negatively, and Yeah, and I think
What do you mean? Like, how do they get psychological trauma?
like they hate their mothers or they hate the women in their life and they project it out on everyone else. And I would say it's the same thing. It's the same for a lot of like the left, hating men. It's like if
I
you're
think that's
like
more systemic, you know?
if you're look, not all of, most of the worst people in terms of criminals and victimizers are men, just statistically. Like so, if you're a woman and you've experienced a lot of negative shit from men that's been traumatizing, it's understandable why then you'd project it outwards, right? In like a political sense. I'd say the same for the right.
And I'm asking purely for the sake of like rhetoric. What things would women have done that would have caused the right to hate them?
Like, what's an example of how a person could have been traumatized by the actions of a woman that?
Yeah.
I don't know, all the horrible divorce court stories and shit of.
That is a fair point, yeah.
All that. I mean, this is one of the reasons I don't go so hard on the all these right moves. You shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. It's because it's like I have personally never, I've been through the divorce court and there's a woman named Casey J who was like a feminist who went and interviewed a bunch of men, and she came out like as like a men's rights activist kind of. And that's always stuck in my mind of like, it's very easy to shit on the men, like, like if a fucking incel like hates women, that's so in my mind it's so obviously bad.
Well, the thing is that if you hate a certain group of people, on the principle of like they did something wrong, like one person represented the entire group, and then you hate all of them now.
Yeah, that's bad in general.
But I guess you just said something and now I forgot. Divorce court. Men's right activist. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so the thing is that we're in a period now where we're hitting like a point of post-feminism, which is like, I want to say like in 1990, it started in the 1990s, if I remember correctly. There were like a few articles on it, and it's gotten a lot more commonplace now because a lot of people even a lot of women will not like want to be labeled as feminist, and they'll be like, no, I'm not a feminist. Like, that's bad.
Yes, I have noticed a vibe shift.
And the thing is that when you like actually prompt them, they have feminist ideals because feminist ideals lay in egalitarianism. It's humanism. So anyone who's a men's rights activist is technically, and feminism might just be like a misnomer.
I think so, and I'm very big on if the label isn't bad, abandon, or if the label isn't good, abandon it.
I think that might be it's got a branding problem. It's got a PR problem. Because the thing is that it's not about one being better than the other. It's about egalitarianism and mutual respect. And if you can't like hit that base, like we respect each other, we're cool, like I interact with you, you interact with me, we can be friends, we can hang out.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there's going to be a bunch of strife.
Yeah. All right. Last question. Which of these is gayer? Okay.